quarantine day 28. And no, that's not me hanging there. I'm still fine. But let me introduce you to Boner. Boner is a skeleton who loves to hang out in my sister's backyard. And I think as we are alone now, I can take off my mask, if you don't mind. Oh, that's better. Now I decided to give this skeleton a weathering. What is aging, what is weathering? Well, you take something new and you make it look old. And it's all about randomness in general. And you can apply this to all kinds of stuff you want to, put out for Halloween or in general to make it look a little bit more realistic. And as an example, I have this coconut that fell down the tree this morning, and you see how the master of randomness Mother Nature is. You have so many different colors, and so it's all about randomness. And to achieve this, in my mind, I have to be almost concentrated to be random. As my good friend Paul would say, use what you have. Don't run to the store and buy new stuff. Just look around your house and see if you find stuff. I got this kind of old wood stain, brown of course. You need dark stuff obviously. I have some acrylic paints from black to brown, reddish tones, some greens. I have an old brush, I have some pieces of cloth. And I have this propane torch and some clean wrap, and probably you saw this trick already in one of my videos where Paul was building that gate from Stranger Things, and it's a pretty nice technique. So yeah, let's get started. Now, first step I will do, and well, this is a bit optional, but I use some little sandpaper just to roughen up the surface a little. Now I go over and take some wood stain here, and this is just brown wood stain. You can use probably every dark color wood stain. So I take a piece of cloth and I dunk this in there, and I randomly put on some of this wood stain, and this just gives us a little base where we're going from. So I'm using a brush here to get in all those little cavities, and then I will simply wipe it off without cloth. Just tap on it. Just brush it on randomly and tap it off with a cloth. And that's our first coat we do. Dear patient, I'm sorry, but we have to remove your mask. Okay, I'm ready, I think. Go ahead. Okay. Now, this is a pretty good spot here because you see you have this cavity. So I will put in more paint inside of that thing, or I will just smear it on. And when I rub it away with the other cloth, I want to take care that I don't go into the cavity. So you see that we have some of the thicker paint remaining in there. You may have seen my video about how to build a waterfall. You saw me do a similar technique by using old newspaper or a plastic bag to give it a stone-like texture. Of course, that's not what we want right now here, so I'm using a cloth. Now my pirate has a wooden leg, and I will also cover this with the wood stain, but a little bit different. In this case, I will just brush it on as I would stain wood. Okay, so we primed Boner. I like to call it priming, but we put on the first coat, give him a specific look. Now I hung him up there to dry on his preferred spot overnight, and next thing we're gonna do is a black wash, and after that we go to other color palettes and go to detailing. Okay, so Boner dried up a little overnight. Next thing we're gonna do is the black wash. So I just got me a little bit of water here and some black acrylic paint, and I will make a very thin paint, very watery. I used that old brush from yesterday. And then we go ahead and simply just tap onto some spots and let it run down. We will wipe it off later on. Rain, for example, would run down and leave marks over time, or dirt, you know, getting into those cavities and stuff. So that's what I try to create here. Sometimes you need to let it dry a little on some spots like here, because there is nothing it can grab to, so I just wait maybe a minute before I try to tap it off again, so it has some chance of bind a little to the plastics. Okay, so we will also black wash the wooden leg. So again, we just brush it on here. Make sure it goes into this wood grain. Brush it on thick, and I will let it in there for a couple of minutes, so it really has time to settle. And now I will use my cloth and just gently tap on it to remove any excess paint, but be careful to leave most of the black paint inside of the grain. Now we finished the black wash, so next thing I want to do is I will start with some different greens, and I will simply add this to my black wash. I would dump half of it out, so I just have a little tiny bit left. We want a little green everywhere where the weather would hit it, maybe in some of the joints, kind of moss or something that grows on it. So in theory the wooden leg, of course, would like also get green and dirty, so I thought of maybe adding some dirt to it to make it a little bit more three-dimensional. So here I use a little bit more of the actual green without the black. It can really be worn down, and there are algae and moss growing on top of it. Now, and here is another trick, because teeth usually are coated with enamel, so we want to have them a little bit more shiny than the rest of the skull. And to do that, we could use some fancy lacquer sprays or colors, paints, whatever you find. In my case, I use wood glue. You could also use almond glue. I simply brush on the wood glue as I would do with some paint. And that will give it a very nice shine when it dries out, because it will become more or less translucent. Now comes the fun part. I use some clean wrap, rip off a small piece. I will go ahead and put some of our glue mixture inside of the eyeball. I just stick in some plastic wrap here. You would need a little water spritz bottle, just in case anything catches fire. Okay, next I will take care of this thing. Whether your skeleton has one or not, but in this case this is attached permanently to the skull, so it's a synthetic kind of tissue, and for this I really recommend you to have some water ready and your propane torch, and let's go ahead and just burn some little holes in there. Most of the time those store-bought skeletons have pretty decent looking bones already, but what most of them have in common is that the hands And the feet there are just not pretty well made. It's just because it would get way too expensive to make hands articulating. So we will take care of that. So I'm applying a little bit of our glue concoction here, glue and the remaining paint, and I will wrap each finger in some shrink wrap. Not very tight, just wrap it around there in some way, because we will do the same thing as we did with the eyes. We will melt this on top of it. And then we simply go ahead and burn this down a little bit. So most of the weathering is done on this skeleton. As you can see, he got this metal hook here. Usually I would hit this with some black spray paint and maybe rub in some graphite powder to make it look like metal. I already did a video together with Paul onto this subject using graphite powder. You can click on the link I will put on the upper right hand corner, and yeah, you can see how this works. But for now, first I will try to weather this t-shirt, because I want him to wear an old weathered, ripped apart t-shirt, and therefore we will throw it in some water. We will simply moisten it up. Okay, so now we need to stain this. I just got me some fresh water in my old cup. We had some black, maybe some brown. We will add a little bit of green later, maybe a little bit more black. That was probably almost too much. And then we mix this all together. Could also add a little sawdust, for example, or dirt, or whatever you have lying around. And then we will pour this more or less over this whole thing. Let it soak in. Wash this in that slurry. Now we go ahead and rip some holes in this. Some random holes, just to make it look authentic. So we have some nice holes, and the next thing, again, we will use our water spritz bottle and our blowtorch, and we will burn this thing. He came out pretty well, I would say. We stained the whole thing, we black washed it, we used several shades of black, brown, green, all kinds of stuff. I even did this little graphite trick by just sanding down a little bit of crayon on some sandpaper, rub it on while the paint is still wet, and polished it up a little, so it gives it a little bit more of a metal shininess. Also, I did this to those 3 metal rings of his wooden leg, and yeah, we did the blowtorch technique by burning some holes, melting some plastic onto it, just to make it look a little nasty. As I said, there are no specific rules of doing this. It's just use what you have lying around, as Paul would say. So I hope you enjoy it. By the way, this thing will make an appearance over the next months in my sister's YouTube channel. They both, her and her husband, will stream a couple of times a week live music from Key West, and this, by the way, will be a part of the decor. So yes, I hope you enjoy it. Please leave me a comment below give me some input. And yeah, I will see you very soon in the next video. As I said before, unfortunately for now I can't do any laser related videos as my laser cutter is a couple of thousand miles away. I think it's in that direction. And yeah, as soon as I get back to it, you will know the first. So I hope you enjoyed, and I see you in the next one. Until then, see you.